Hey guys, back for another one. Backwards. Feels backwards. Kind of like our society right now. Fucking backwards and upside down. What he said is that he was actively working with Charlie Kirk, something I didn't realize. Him and Brett Weinstein were working together to get these current vaccines pulled so that they're not going to be pushed, because they both saw that, they're obviously harmful to people, and there's a reason why they were pushed in the beginning, and it's a big pharma thing. What's interesting is that they were on the brink of getting these vaccines pulled, and what Brett said, and I'm pretty sure he was only able to say this much on Joe Rogan's podcast, because we both know that there's a certain level that even Joe Rogan can't go above. And so, he was, I'm not saying, but saying it without saying that everyone to a certain extent in the public eye has a certain script. They were talked to, they were warned, they said, you want to keep doing business like this? Okay, this is what you do say, this is what you don't say. And there's certain things that Joe Rogan even won't say for fear of either getting canceled or, worse. And so they don't want to talk about as much without, they can say it without trying to bring a whole lot of suspicion to it, about the fact that Brett Weinstein was working with Charlie Kirk shortly before Charlie Kirk's death. In fact, his death is what Brett Weinstein said put a severe dampener and made the process go a lot slower of getting vaccines taken off the thing, whatever that is medically. It's not my field or anything, but whatever that is, getting them taken off. The issue here is that a lot of these places, like especially on YouTube and stuff, they still seem to be very leery about challenging Big Pharma, even though it's supposed to be independent media and all this stuff. Independent of what? Because if we both know that CNN and MSNBC are both bought and paid for by Big Pharma, Fox News, all of them, Newsmax maybe even, understand why white Christian nationalists are so quick to defend Israel and Jews and just everything and anything. Anytime you say anything bad, like, or apprehensive or questioning about why we're sending Israel so much money, they get weird. They get, oh my, oh, you're not saying the same things my people are saying, you must be an enemy. They get very defensive. And I'm wondering, what are the ties between, and just how much of an influence Benjamin Netanyahu has over Trump. And just watching Trump at this latest thing with Mark Levin, and Mark Levin's arm around him, like, oh, this is my buddy right here, he loves the Jews and all this stuff, and Trump just kind of going along with it. I'm watching Trump's demeanor around Benjamin Netanyahu, and there's something going on there. There's stuff on Newsmax now about like the city of David and how there's like American flags on plaques. There's like a whole Christian like section, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, really think about it. Why is there American flags and this thing about Christians? Because of how much fucking money we're giving them. It's getting to be sickening, and they realize it. And I think they're trying to come out ahead of it and protect themselves. And as soon as I make a comment about it, about how much crazy money we're giving those assholes, the narc just like completely clams up and just goes weird. And it's like, oh, you're not supposed to say anything apprehensive about what's going on there? Don't you think it's crazy how the hundreds of millions of dollars are being funneled over there for the Israelis to just have automatic health care and check like bank accounts in their names when they're born and just all this shit, the welfare from the government, and it's literally being paid for by us. We can't question that at all. And for what reason? Is it because we're scared of being called Nazis or anti-Semites, or what is it really? But anyway, I wonder what that connection is to Big Pharma, if there is one. Because it seems like white Christian nationalists are the first ones to defend the medical system at large. Like the vaccines and the... I mean, not saying that, of course, you know, the whole Biden thing with Fauci and all that was like huge in Moderna's thing, but Trump got it going. Trump is the fast track to a cure. Trump is the shut it down for 2 weeks. Trump is the one that like really got it going. Biden's just the one that kept it going. So, and then it became a, oh, they're coming after our freedoms by making us wear these masks, and it became a freedom thing for the right to rebel against all of the draconian policies that were instituted around COVID. And so then it flipped to being, you know, Trump is the one that brought Fauci out there in front of everyone and said, here, this guy's got the answers, you know. Fauci's the one that said mask, mask, mask. And then it became a symbol of liberals to wear the mask. So, I don't know. That's why I think it got confused, because of what happened in 2020. How all of a sudden we had a new president and the same virus going on, pandemic. Transitioning, speaking of transitions, I think in order to accurately elaborate on like how we're going to do this new earth sort of currency energetic thing, how are we going to make it work? Like, there's got to be a transition between going from money as we know it, the beans, to this, you know, no money. How are we going to transition from a cash-based monetary currency type society and way of economy, commerce, into an energetic exchange? And I kind of thought about what we can call it too, moving forward. There needs to be like an official name for it. Like I was talking, maybe an acronym of some sort. I still haven't had a chance to sit down and actually think about what that's going to be called, but the energetic exchange. One moment, please. Gotta love the trains. So we were talking about an energetic exchange based on will, intention, and that the currency is actually your state of consciousness. And what I kind of want to... So what I was thinking about was using sort of the model for the social credit score to kind of keep people honest moving forward, if we're going to be relying on this transfer of energy and this good faith bartering sort of system. We could it could be backed by a sort of a social credit score, but I think we should change the name of it to a consciousness credit score. So how high of a consciousness do you have? Instead of calling it a social credit score, maybe a social consciousness credit score, possibly, because then it would more accurately highlight the direct correlation to your amount of energy that you have behind something that you're doing, how much integrity is in it, in the work that you're offering, in the job that you can perform, or the services, and the work that you're seeking, or the goods and whatever else, the finished goods. It's just a matter of baseline, where it comes down to like the food producers. What are the food producers gonna need in order to keep producing the food that they do? So if we're talking farmers, we're talking diesel fuel, so that's gonna need to be harvested, pumped out of the ground, refined for their tractors, if we still do work that way, in that sense. Otherwise, if we go back to using animals for our labor, or just manual labor, and just doing it like locally, or everyone gets a little piece of land, or organized communities in which we can kind of pool together and then have, agrarian sort of activities, but like the transfer of the goods over great distances. So the greater the distance, the more there needs to be some sort of I don't think just intention and energetic vibration alone is going to do it. Like if you're talking about, we have to go down to Texas to get enough diesel in order to fuel our tractors up in Wisconsin, one guy in a tanker truck is not going to be able to say, okay, I have this to offer in exchange for the gas. What's going to be in it for the people in Texas then? That's where I think there might still need to be some sort of an exchange of valuable commodities. So like, what does Wisconsin produce? What can be traded with Texas? Or just, do we have agreements like right up front, like we say, we're going to need just a steady flow of diesel. We're going to need this much diesel in a year, and in exchange for that diesel, we'll give you this much corn or milk, which then that's also going to have to be transported, and so the logistics of this, and I'm not saying I'm a professor at logistics or anything, but the logistics would have to be worked out. But it's an idea of still keeping the free and open trade and free and open energetic market, while still being able to acquire certain resources that individual areas or geographic localities can't, or don't have. Like there's, oil. What else are we going to use, really? So like, where else is it going to come from if it's not from overseas? Which then you'd almost especially need a pretty foundational trade arrangement. And so the people that would think that up and put it into, implement it, would be part of that system then. They would be the ones, the movers and the shakers there that make that happen. But their primary takeaway would just be facilitation and fairness, so that we can ensure that the stuff keeps flowing, but we're not actually exchanging like money, beans. You know, we got to get rid of the beans. And what's it going to take to get rid of the beans fully without saying, oh, we still have to pay for this? Or, yep, gas, there's just no way of getting around it. Still got to pay for gas. I really don't see anything besides having to deal with other countries, which ultimately, what would we have to deal with other countries for? You know, ultimately, if the whole world is in the same situation, in the same boat of awakening and awareness and coming online with New Earth 2027 and all that, if not a major devastating switch, something happens, some kind of post-apocalyptic situation where it's a big flatline reset, like a flood, or, you know, whatever happens, it's going to have to affect the world. And then in the wake of that, we need to realize that the old systems weren't serving us. And then transition to these new systems where it's not backed by on a currency monetary type economy. It's backed by an energetic trade exchange for, you know, goods for goods, but also just like nothing actually being like at the point of sale to the customer. There is nothing asked for. It's a transfer of stewardship. So that gets into ownership, and I've put out videos about stewardship. They might not be as cohesive as some of my videos of late. I might have to redo some of the ones on stewardship, but I have several pages that I wrote on stewardship and how that could work accurately without being intrusive into people's freedom and free will and will of choice and all that. So there's that. But we really do need to see where the ladder of value ends for like where the money and how much it's worth to who it's worth. As that ladder, as that goes up, if we make it worthless to us, we no longer acknowledge its value. How high does that go then? Because we're still going to need to be asking for certain things from certain people. So how high where are those certain people at? And then can those people be awakened or part on board? The ones who just say it is a asteroid or a solar flare that wipes everything out and everything's reset. Now, I mean, it gets to like all the Bitcoin's gone, all the, like, just let's just say EMP solar flare just fucking wipes out the digital grid as we know it, and no one knows how much money anyone has or how much debt anyone has, or everything is reset to the point where now in the rebuilding, we're just going to have to go off of what do we have, what can we do, what can we provide, what are we seeking, and sort of start doing business that way locally, but also on a global or, you know, transnational scale, realizing, okay, we're going to need, you know, we have the milk, we have the corn, but we're going to need beef from Iowa or Kansas, or, you know, we'll give you some cheese. We need beef or pork or, you know, chickens, eggs, whatever it is from down south. And in exchange for that is our commodities going to hold the value, or how do you value things without a currency to say, all right, it's worth this much? Is it going to have to go back to the gold standard in some form so that at least there's a standard for what things are worth? A truckload of milk is worth a thing of gold, and we'll just kind of keep it at that, so that maybe then 2 trucks worth of eggs or something equals a truck worth of milk, or half a truck worth of diesel equals a full truck of milk, something like that along those lines, equals, and it all goes back to each thing equaling the thing of gold, that unit of gold, whatever that is. I mean, I could see that, but just the main thing being that the gold is not actually being exchanged, but there's that reference point for the value of it. That's just kind of my idea there, as far as that goes. I know this video is a little bit different than some of my last videos, in that I was like on the fence of whether or not to do one today. I had some great ideas for one, and I forgot to write them down, and then I was writing some of them down, but they're not all intertwined. Like, we started out talking about COVID and Charlie Kirk and Brett Weinstein and the Joe Rogan podcast, and now here we are back on New Earth economy and energetic exchange, and then somewhat on the social credit score, because I think that's very important. However we see that rolled out here, because we know it's coming. Like, basically what happens over there, it's just a matter of time before it ends up showing itself over here. Like, right now, I just heard that the UK is getting rid of jury trials. They're just going to have a judge, and that's it. The judge decides, and away he goes. It's sort of a thing. Or judge decides the sentence, and that's it. You're accused and tried by the same people, with no checks and balances keeping you safe. Kind of scary, because that's happening in England, and it's only a matter of time before it starts getting pushed over here. Another thing, the people who have land claims, like in Europe, basically everywhere is rented. Few things are owned, and most of the things that are owned by big, like, they own many different things. So, like, not your average person owns a house in Germany. But, like, coming over here now, you're starting to see that a lot more, where the ownership is going from the private citizen, making it harder and harder and harder for people to acquire property, houses even, and more of a renting society in most areas. Also, there's the farms that are being bankrupted by policies, like even corporations like Monsanto trying to implement certain policies about their GMO seeds and their pesticides and their pesticide resistant seeds and all that crap, that is literally coming in and bankrupting farms through litigation because of their crap, which are then being systematically bought up by companies like Acre Trader, owned by J.D. Vance. And in that way, is that the last ditch land grab that we see, of the last grab of our freedoms before the last shoe drops? Like, that's the last thing they need to get full control over us, actual control, is the food. Obviously, the food and the land that it's grown on, and the land that we could potentially go and live off of in the face of a tyrannical government. Like, just picture, there's a lot of information out there that is saying that the U.S. is on track for the early warning signs of another war, because in every way we're gearing up for it. Basically, we're securing precious metals, we're securing oil rights, we're doing all this stuff, we're shutting down, closing our borders, all this stuff that we're doing lately, what Trump's been doing all year, saying it's America first policy and all this stuff. It literally looks it like is directly tied to being that we are in the preparation stages of bracing for war. So if that were to happen, and we realize that the white Christian nationalist Nazis are actually Nazis, that they're not exactly what we thought they were, and that we don't want to be following them, and Trumpler is taking over and he's gotten out of control, and it's time to kind of put the kibosh on that before it gets out of hand, and we're the next Deutschland, 1943 Germany. We don't want to be that. And so we might have to stand up. And if we don't have the power in the land ownership, or the ability to, dictate where our food comes from, i.e. in still owning the farms in private hands, not in the hands of big banks and larger corporations. And that's why I wonder if, in the face of this war coming up, impending, is the ability to produce food and private land ownership going to be the last thing that keeps us free, in a state of freedom in this country. And by either letting it slip or giving it up somehow, is that going to then, further the agenda of taking away even more of our rights? As there's so many people that are like standing up to just the oppression of their job, like the place that they work for, like asking for time off of work, or there's certain things that are like, they're like coming out of things that were just put in our face for decades, that we just put up with, and we're done putting up with that kind of crap. But at what point, who's gonna enforce it? Because when enough people stand up, like, that's the bottom line. At that point, what we're standing up against, they're gonna need protection. And if if the government has no ability to protect, then what's gonna happen there? Just some scenarios of the transition that, there's really no way of saying how it's going to go, because no one really knows. You'd have to be able to tell the future in order. But you can look at the signs and what's likely, what it looks like is heading down the pipe, and then try to, speculate on what could amount from different scenarios. But this whole money thing is just, it's gotten old. And especially with the trillionaire Elon Musk. I just can't. And people still look up to that somehow. Even though, you know, a lot of them would say, oh, he earned his money honestly. He did this, this, and this. Well, no. Because look at how much he spent just putting rockets up there, just putting his Starlink thing up there. You can't tell me that he's making all this money off of that. It's government. It's literally they're taking our money and giving it to him. And it's just sickening. And now you make the argument for, look at all the starving people in our own damn country. And he's just taking up all these contracts and just, he's going to call himself a trillionaire. And then, and at the same time, what starving people, what homeless? I don't see them anywhere. That's because you had them rounded up and put into civil commitment centers. That's why they're nowhere to be seen anymore. All the people that would be poor and that want to buck the system and that want to say, no, this is crap, this is tyranny, I don't agree with it, they're going to be rounded up and put in cages. So that way we don't have any kind of uprisings of people who are just fed up with it. Because in order to be fed up with it, you know, you're not going to be middle class and homeowner with 2 car loans and 4 kids and, you know, on track for, those aren't the people that are going to be rising up. Those are the people that are going to be hunkering down and hoping for the best, because they don't want to make any big waves, because if it comes back on them, their livelihoods and everything they know as they know it is at risk. It's the people that have nothing to lose, for one thing, and have lost everything to the very system that they're rebelling against. Those are the ones that are dangerous. And those are the ones that they're locking up. The people that literally look like me right now. If they lock enough of them people up, who is going to be around anymore to revolt? There isn't going to be. It's going to be 1984. It's literally going to be, what was that country? I think it was Cuba, where they had not thought police, but you know what I'm talking, like the thought police, where you can't say bad things about the current regime, otherwise you get taken off the street and disappeared. They don't hear from you again. That happens in Cuba. If they're not killed on sight. I'm not sure what happens specifically, but I saw something on that where you got to be careful in certain places what you say. And if it's overheard, there's literally people who it's their job to then enforce that. So, like, is that what we're, I mean, at what point do we say, okay, I don't like things the way they are now, and I see where things are headed, so let's do something now before it gets even harder to do something about it. And I think everyone listening still, hopefully, knows what I'm talking about. What do we need? What's next? What do we need to see? We know the Democrats are bullshit. We know the Republicans are bullshit. We know the whole fucking Washington, D.C. is corrupt and bullshit. What else do we need to see? We saw one be a pedophile. We saw Charlie Kirk get assassinated. He was the innocent one. Erica Kirk? Holy shit. Narcissistic demon. Look at all her ties. And back to Trump and the Romanian brothel and all that bullshit. Charlie Kirk is the only honest one that was in there, and they killed him because he couldn't be bought. He couldn't be had, even though Erica Kirk was the handler. Guaranteed. I don't know. I'll leave it with that. Maybe with something to think about. Any comments, send them my way, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for checking this one out, and never stop spreading your light.